We are live. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are live. This morning, I have a question for you. Are you a man who's been struggling with your physical health and how you've been feeling lately? Well, this morning, I want to get into 5 important tips on how you can improve your health as a man. And we're starting right now. Praise the Lord, everyone. Welcome to Man Talk Live. I'm your host, Walter Strong, where we help you to raise the standard of manhood in your life so that you can be a great husband, a devoted father, and a man of integrity. And as I said in our opening this morning, we're going to get into 5 important tips on helping you to improve your health as a man. Not just your physical health, but we're going to get into your mental and your emotional health. And so if you're new here this morning, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, you know what to do, replay crew. Hashtag Team Replay in the comment section. And so as we get into this content, believe it or not, I am just getting into the studio about maybe 30 minutes ago. Had to do the live recording of this episode at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a second week. For the last 2 weeks, I've had doctor's appointments. My first doctor's appointment was basically just to go to the doctor so I can get my prescriptions filled. But one of the things that I've come to understand that once you start taking prescribed medication and once your refills kind of run out, if you go past a certain period of time when you have not had blood work done, a particular primary physician can make the call to say, before I prescribe new medicine to you or refill medicine to you, we need to get your blood work checked just to kind of see how the medication has been working and has been improving your overall physical health and addressing the concerns that initially that was raised on why medicine needed to prescribe. So that was kind of new for me to kind of understand. And so that's part of the reason why last week's episode was pushed to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then again, I had another appointment with the same doctor's office in preparation for a procedure that I need to have done in March. And so we'll talk a little more about that. But as a result, as I was thinking about this week's episode and what I wanted to talk about, since the last 2 weeks I've been in the doctor's office, I figured, I said, oh, hey, let's cover the topic of men's health and not just touch on men's health, but let's talk and touch on the mental health and the emotional health of us as men this week. And so we're going to get into this content this morning. So let me pull up the content and let's get into this discussion on men's health this morning. And so when we talk about men's health and us as men going to a doctor and seeing a primary physician, I think first we have to start with some of the objections on why we as men don't go to the doctor on a regular basis. I'm talking about just a regular checkup and having a primary physician, because women, our females counterparts, our wives, our mothers, our daughters, our grandmothers, our aunts, they will go to the doctor. They will get themselves checked out, and they will have their regular routine checks that they need to have. So because when that is done, it gives the doctors a information over time as say your spouse, as she goes to the doctor and gets herself checked out, not only through her regular checkup, but just through other like mammograms and other type of important tests that women have to take. The doctor then can look 3 months, 6 months, a year from now as they regularly come, and they can kind of track certain things, and as a result be preventive in catching certain things that could end up being a concern later on. And so doc doctors, and our women in our life, they understand the importance of why they need to go and see their regular primary physician. For us as men, unfortunately, we are not as diligent, we're not as disciplined, we're not as consistent when it comes to that. And I'll be the first to raise my hand on this episode to tell you, yes, I do have a primary physician. Yes, I went to go see my regular, get my regular checkup done. But when it came to other types of things that the doctor may have mentioned that we need to look at, I was not as consistent with that. And so as a result, in my last physical checkup, when those tests needed to be taken, and other things looked at in my physical health need to be looked at, I wasn't consistent with that, and I procrastinated. I procrastinated to the point where, start feeling certain symptoms in my body, and I said, okay, could this be a bigger concern? So it eventually got me to go back to the doctor. And so I thought about the importance of, yes, I need to go and to see a primary physician and get myself checked out. We as men need to do that. But what are some of the objections that keep us from being consistent and regularly doing this? And I think one of the objections that we deal with is fear. It's a fear factor that we deal with as men, why we don't go and get ourselves checked out on a regular basis, so that there is a baseline record of history that a doctor can look and track over a period of time. If you had a father or a mother that dealt with diabetes, and now you have been prescribed and being pre-diabetic yourself now in your life, because of our fear factor and because of our lack of trust of doctors, we leave those things unchecked, and as a result, it can end up affecting us in a much harmful way if we leave those things unchecked. If our parents, our grandparents dealt with kidney issues and dealt with dialysis, and as a result, it ended up leading to them eventually passing away. Now we're kind of dealing with those same types of symptoms. We unfortunately push back to get ourselves checked out so those things can be prevented. And so there's a fear factor that we have in our lives that keeps us from going to the doctor. There's a lack of trust that we end up developing in ourselves while we don't go and get ourselves checked out. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine several years ago, and one of the concerns that he raised, and one of the objections he raised, was because of the experiments that were done on the Tuskegee Airmen during the Tuskegee experiment back in the in those times where pilots were Black Americans, and they were being tested on their blood and all types of experiment. And so it developed a lack of trust in us trusting doctors with our health, especially when doctors, particularly us as Black men, when they don't look like us, when they don't have the same skin as us and color and ethnicity, we end up having a lack of trust in trusting doctors that don't look like us. And so the fear factor, the lack of trust, is one reason why there is an objection. Another objection that we end up struggling with, and why we don't go and get ourselves checked out, because of a lack of knowledge. A lack of knowledge in why these things need to be done, why we need to get our blood pressure checked on a regular basis, why we need to make sure that if family members in the before us dealt with strokes, and heart attacks are we susceptible in our generation, in our time? And because we don't understand this and we lack this knowledge, as a result, if you've ever seen the commercial with the gentleman, he's just going about his day in the commercial, traveling to the store, traveling to different places. But unbeknown to him, there is a hospital gurney that is following him. And he looks back, and the hospital gurney kind of puts itself out of sight where the man can't see it. And so he keeps going on, but the gurney is following him. And so what the commercial is saying is that particularly us as men, Black men, who are susceptible to heart attacks, who's susceptible to heart disease and susceptible to possible strokes, especially if you're a person who drinks and who smokes, and you can end up having these concerns that when you end up having an episode where you can end up possibly having a possible heart attack, you can be in your early 20s and 30s and you don't even see it coming. And that's because lacking the knowledge of why these things need to be done by our doctors and getting ourselves checked out. So we have the fear factor, we have the lack of trust. So I put those together as one. We have the lack of knowledge. And then I think the third objection that keeps me and you as men in getting ourselves checked out and going to the doctor is because it causes me and you to feel vulnerable. It causes me and you to feel vulnerable when you go to the doctor's office and you sign in. You give them your health insurance information. You got to sit there in the waiting room while you see other people who are waiting to see the doctor. Some may not be feeling and looking as well. You hear them coughing, you hear them having issues. And then you go into the doctor and they got to check your blood pressure, they got to check your vitals. And you're like, and you haven't did this in almost 3 to 5 years. This is completely foreign and new to you. You see them check your blood pressure, and they're kind of asking these questions and stuff, and your blood pressure is like 137/82, and you don't realize that that is acceptably high, where you may have to possibly be put on medication, and it puts you in a place of vulnerability. And we as men, we don't want to feel vulnerable. Let's talk, man. Let's talk, Clark Kent. Let's talk the Superman, Kal-El. We want to be Kal-El. We want to be Superman. We don't want to be made vulnerable and being Clark Kent when we don't have our powers. And then when something hits us and impacts us, we feel blood coming down our face. If you've ever seen Superman 3 with Christopher Reeve, when he doesn't have his powers anymore, we don't want to be Clark Kent. We don't mind being Clark Kent and still having our powers, and we can turn into Kal-El and we can turn into Superman, but we don't want to be the Clark Kent who doesn't have any powers, and we are vulnerable. And so as a result of these objections, they keep us from going to the doctor. They keep us from having a primary physician that if there's an emergency and someone has to check your phone, yes, they may find your closest emergency contact, which is your wife or your daughter or your mother if you're a son, but will they find a primary physician in your contact information? Will they find a primary physician doctor's office and your contact information of where they can call and say, Walter is having some issues, we have to rush him to the hospital? I need you to think about that. I need you to let that breathe for a moment. And so, which takes me to tip number 2. We talked about the objections. Let's talk about your physical health. If you've been struggling with your physical health and you've been having blood pressure concerns, and you've been having pre-diabetic concerns, you've been having headache concerns, you've been having issues where you're vitamin D deficient, where you've been having pains and numbness in your body. If you're having those types of issues and concerns, in your life, you need, as Kool Mo D used to say in a hip hop song, you need to go see the doctor. Now, when he made that song, if you Google it, if you look it up on YouTube, he was talking about STD. He was talking about sexual transmitted diseases. Now, if you having an STD moment, yes, you need to go see the doctor. But if you ain't dealing with an STD situation and you're dealing with some of the other issues that I'm talking about, you need to go see the doctor. Well, you say, well, Walter, I don't have a primary physician. I don't have a doctor. I don't know where to start. There are all these urgent care offices all around my neighborhoods, and I don't know which one to go to. And that's understandable. And so maybe you need to have a conversation with another man that you respect and you trust, and you know who's been going to see his own doctor, and maybe share with him your desire to find a doctor so you can get yourself checked out. Starting with another man that you trust and respect and you talk to on a regular basis. Maybe that man is on your job as a coworker. Maybe that man is another man in the church that you casually have conversation with. Maybe it's a pastor of a church that you go to. Have a conversation with another man so that you can be able to find a primary physician doctor's office so that you can go see the doctor and get yourself checked out. Not only do I want to talk about physical health from a doctor's standpoint, but even maybe going to see a dentist. When is the last time you had a regular cleaning of your teeth? You say, well, Walter, I clean my teeth. I got the electric toothbrushes and I got the Brita water and I got it all going on. That's all good. When is the last time you went to go see the dentist? When is the last time you went to go see an eye doctor? Get yourself checked out from not only from a primary physician from a physical health standpoint, but from an eye doctor standpoint and from a dentist standpoint. And if necessary, even getting your feet checked out. Yeah. I know that, again, we as men, we don't want to be vulnerable. This is real talk, real issues with some real solutions this morning here on Man Talk Live. Which brings me to my third point and third tip. Not only do you want to address your physical health, but you want to address your mental health. Now, when I was growing up, when you talked about mental health concerns, for a young man or a man to say that he needed help with his mental health concerns, that was something that had a negative stigma put upon it, that there was something wrong with you, that you could be viewed as being crazy. And so as a result, especially us as Black men, we pushed back from that. But yet we were still dealing with childhood trauma like bullying. We were dealing with childhood trauma like having low self-esteem and dealing with suicidal thoughts, physical and sexual abuse or molestation. We were dealing with these things and it was affecting us mentally. We ended up having this childhood trauma and we were suppressing it in our childhood. We were suppressing it in our adolescence. We were suppressing it as teenagers, and we didn't talk to anyone because the rule of the household that our parents taught us simply was, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Now, I don't know about you. If you grew up in the time that I grew up, you heard what goes on this house, goes on in this house, stays in this house. And so as a result, we didn't get any help. And so if you are a man who's being impacted by childhood trauma from things that's happened to you in your past that's affecting you today as a man, it's okay to be able to acknowledge you need help. You need to talk to someone. Does that mean that you're crazy? No. Does it mean that you've lost it? Your mental stability? And that you've gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? No. It means you need to talk to someone. And talking to someone could be talking to another man or talking to a licensed therapist who can bring some perspective on the childhood trauma that you could be dealing with. For me, my childhood trauma was being bullied when I was growing up, constantly fighting a lot because it seemed in my neighborhood that I lived in that that's what kids wanted to do. It was a way of proving to yourself that you are the man when in fact you are nothing but a little boy who has all this energy and you don't know how to channel it the right way into some type of constructive way or through sports or something. And so you got to prove your dominance and your self-worth by bullying someone else. And it got so much to the point where I just got tired of always having to fight. It's interesting. I was watching an interview with Isaiah Thomas who did on All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Stephen A. Jackson. And he was saying growing up in Chicago, he had to go through the same thing. Having to fight a lot. It's just what kids wanted to do. It was just part of the rite of passage of growing up in the neighborhood. And for him, he realized there were some fights he was going to win, and there was some fights that he was going to lose. But he was cool with that because he felt it was just part of the normal society of young black boys fighting with one another. Well, I didn't too much agree with that perspective because I was a person who didn't like a lot of confrontation, especially when I saw a lot of confrontation and fighting going on in my own household between my mother and my own father. And because I saw those things, to now have to go into the neighborhood and thinking I can go and play and have fun and play stickball and play baseball and play catch football or tackle football in the neighborhood with other kids, only to end up having to now, because someone doesn't like the fact that you have a mother and father and that they don't have a mother and father, and now they want to bully you and want to start and pick a fight with you. I got to a point where I got tired of that. Now, what I didn't realize is because of all that childhood trauma, how it impacted me in my and me having a vision and doing well academically in school. And ultimately, what was I doing in school? I was end up getting in fights with people in school who want to bully me. And it got to the point where ultimately I ended up dropping out of school in the 9th grade, when instead of being in the 9th grade, I should have been in the 12th grade. And I dropped out. Now, ultimately, I went to Detroit Job Corps. I got my GED, went and got a job, later on worked, and eventually went to college and got a college degree. But that childhood trauma of bullying impacted me through my education, through my adulthood, even in my time where just recently I had to sit down and talk to someone about the childhood trauma and how was it impacting me in other ways. And so if you are a man who's been dealing with mental health issues through some type of childhood trauma, that could be a sign that you need to talk to someone. And again, I get it. As men, we don't want to be viewed as being vulnerable. But vulnerable is not a sign of weakness. Being vulnerable is a sign of being human as a regular person, that you can be relatable to other people, and you can be empathetic to other men or other people who feel vulnerable and say, yes, I know what that feels like. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live this morning, do me a favor, hit that like button by clicking the thumbs up. Share this episode on your favorite social media platform that you're on the most this morning here on Man Talk Live. Let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live. If you're watching the replay up to this point, give me a hashtag Team Replay in the comments section. All right, so we talked about objections on why we as men don't go and see the doctor and getting ourselves checked out on a regular basis. We talked about our physical health. We talked about our mental health. Let's talk about our emotional health. Our emotional health as men. Again, because we as men have this mentality, alpha male mentality, that we are Superman, we are Kal-El. Maybe you're not a Superman. Maybe you are a Bruce Wayne, Batman. You're the Barry Allen, the fastest man alive. You know, I'm a Marvel fan, love Marvel movies, but my favorite superhero is Barry Allen, the Flash. Because Flash has the ability, not only being the fastest man alive, to break the sound barrier and to go faster than anyone. Flash has the ability to go back in time and to see when events have happened. He even has the ability, though he realizes there is a danger in him doing it, there is consequences in him doing, where he can go back and impact past events that can end up impacting on present and future events. If you've ever seen the episode called Flashpoint, where he goes back to try to save his mother from dying, but he later finds out that him changing those events, that being a fixed event in fixed time, impacts the present and the future. So Flash has that type of superpower. And so would I go back and change some things in my life? No, I wouldn't. But if I had the ability to go back in time and to go and see them again and just to watch the moment of those times, I would. And if I could learn from those, from by being them, and I've learned from my past, I've learned from things, but just to go back and to see it one more time. I know how I got on superheroes, but emotional health. Too many of us as men, we're dealing with burnout. We're dealing with burnout. We're dealing with burnout in relationships of being married. We're dealing with burnout in, make sure I get my camera here. There we go. We're dealing with burnout when it comes to being a father. We're dealing with burnout on the job. We're dealing with burnout in so many different ways. We have no understanding of the concept work-life balance. We're working 40 to 60 hours so that we can be a public success, while on the inside, we are privately struggling. We want to be a public powerhouse who is accomplishing great things, but we are privately suffering at home because we have no concept of understanding of work-life balance. You have 2 to 4 weeks of vacation, you have personal days, you have sick days, But when you take your personal days or when you take your vacation days, instead of you getting yourself some real rest, you going on a vacation and getting away, all you do is work. All you do is, if you're a pastor, you're focused on your church and you're burning out. If you're a content creator on YouTube, instead of you getting some rest and spending time with family and friends, you're focused on the next video to get more views, more subscribers. I thought I'd throw that out to my male YouTubers out there today. And as a result, you're burned out. And you're burned out to the point now where you're saying, I don't want to do this anymore. This ain't fun anymore. You're burned out to the point where you say, I don't want to be married anymore. And so you walk out on your wife and your children, and then you serve her with divorce papers 30 days later. You're burnt out to the point where you say, hey, I don't want to be a dad anymore. And so you walk out of your daughter's life and your dad's life because you're doing these things because you saw your own dad do it. You're doing these things because you heard about how your granddad or your great granddad did it. And because of this emotional health issue of being burnt out, burnout is going from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. You know, as you get older as a man, as you get into the, I kind of feel myself getting into that sage age of life now, of wisdom. I don't consider myself like a Yoda, if you will, a Yoda from Star Wars, but I do feel like I'm a more older and seasoned man who's gained wisdom and experience to come to understand now that when you deal with these things in your life and you see the things that happen into your past, you have to be willing to say, hey, let me hit the pause button for a moment. Let me put a pause in this for a moment because there's some things that are not right and I need to get them corrected so that I can be there for my wife. I can be there for my children. I can be an example for my son. So one day when he wants to eventually meet the right woman for his life, he will see the example of how a woman should be treated, not from just the time that you court a woman and date a woman, from the time of you getting engaged, but to the time you're getting married and to staying married. And the same for your daughter. But as men, we must take care of our emotional health. We have to take up care of our emotional, our mental, and our physical health. And whatever objections that we're dealing with in these areas, whether if it's silent frustration, whether if it's suicidal thoughts or depression, we have to address them as men. My last point that I want to touch on, we need to educate ourselves about our health insurance. For some of us, the only two times we really focus on our health insurance is either when the annual enrollment comes up and we need to re-enroll our health insurance on our job. And we know we have health insurance, but do we know what type of health insurance do we have? We may have single coverage. We may have family coverage. We may have single and a child coverage. But if you ask us, do we understand the difference between in-network and out-of-network? We don't understand. We lack the knowledge in this. We just kind of check the boxes: health, vision, dental, supplemental life, maybe some legal assistance. Scroll down, hit submit. But do we understand the type of coverage that we have, and when we need to pay copays? How much our copay is going to be? Are there any deductibles? We lack the knowledge on our health insurance. The only other time we may hear about our health insurance when it's a person is running for president, for an election year for president, and they talk about the cost of health insurance. And so for some of us, that's the only time we focus and pay attention to health insurance. But if we're going to really improve our overall health as men, we need to understand our health insurance, our coverage, and when we need referrals, so that we can make sure as we get older as men, we're on top of things where we don't become a risk to heart attacks, strokes. We don't become a risk to things like Alzheimer's and dementia, just to name a few. Now, I realize this is an episode that is not, if you clicked on this, especially if you're watching the replay and you want to get more likes, you want to get more views, you want to get more subscribers, you want to grow your YouTube channel. If you clicked on this looking for that, hey, give me a thumbs up, click the like button, keep it moving. But if you are a man who wants to raise the standard of manhood in your life, to be a great husband, a devoted father, a man of integrity, it's time for you to look at these issues and these tips on this topic. And so that's the content this morning. And, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I think I've said everything I need to say. If you are a man who needs help on being able to find a primary physician, let's start a conversation in the comment section on how we can help one another find a primary physician for that one who can't find that one. If you can't find another man to talk to on the job or in your community, Real Men Rising is committed here to helping you, to help you find a primary physician. Let's start there. Let's do, and if I have to bring on experts to go deeper on this topic, we will. I know of someone. I know of two people. One is a content creator. The other one is a one who is just in the trenches, boots to the ground, doing the work and encouraging men to improve their health. And so if I have to reach out to him and ask him for a favor, we'll do it. And so that's the content. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live on how to improve your health as a man, do me a favor, click that like button for me by hitting the thumbs up. Share this on your favorite social media platform that you are on the most. And if you are new to the Real Men Rising YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Click the alert notification button so you'll be alerted when we go live on our next episode of Man Talk Live and when we upload videos that are posted. And join the conversation of real men that's raising the standard of manhood, not just in their life today, but in the generations to come. And so I want to leave you with this question of the day, and we're going to end it here. I heard this question yesterday, and I want to share it with you. And the question was simply this: what's more important to you as a man? To be able to be used as a vessel, as an instrument that helps to launch men like an arrow being shot from a bow into their purpose and destiny, or you having 15 minutes of fame that you think about all the time? I'll say that question again. What's more important to you? Being to be used as an instrument of purpose to launch men to be shot into their purpose and destiny in life? You're the archer. You're just releasing the blow to aim them into their purpose and destiny. Or is 15 minutes of fame more important to you about what you in your life? Let me know in the comments section. That's it. We're going to end it here. We're definitely going to continue this conversation on how to be able to, improve our overall health as men, and not just our health physically, but our health emotionally and mentally. We'll see you in the next episode of Man Talk Live. God bless.